Hello, this is Ellen Walsh, and I am going to give the summary of our meeting around documenting virtual time with families. This session was developed in response to what we were hearing from the network in terms of clarity and comfort level and thoughts around planning for and documenting virtual connections with families using the tools that we have in place for our network. So first, we thought together about going where families are. So how do we know what is most appropriate for each family? That is a question that you and your program supervisors have been thinking about from the time you began doing this work. So we continue to think about that. And especially now, we need to think about emotional and physical considerations as reopening may or may not begin at various levels, what that might mean for programming, what that might not mean for programming. So as always, a focus on quality intentional encounters is at the front of our mind. And no matter where we find ourselves in coming alongside and going where families are, each type of contact we're able to make is valuable when it is responsive. So if we don't push too hard, but we don't give up too easily, the hope is that we are connecting with families in the best way possible to be in support of their priorities and their interests. So a quick recap on where our resources are located. Everything that we've developed as a part of the virtual visit rollout is all located on the Baby Talk portal. You can get to the portal either if you've bookmarked the page previously, or you can always go to our main website and click on this box here. Everything that falls within the portal falls under training calendar, the BTPA calendar, and then the BTPA resources and information. That's the page where you will find all of the virtual connection supportive documents, including a new document that we are introducing as part of this session. So this is the section. When you click on the resources option, you will see all of these options at the top are newly developed virtual resources. And within the guidance, protocols, and documentation, again, a new piece of a new document, and this recording will be included in that section. So just clicking into that section one more time or doing another click in, you can see that there's an overall broad guidance for the network in terms of how Baby Talk has been thinking about and will continue to think about our support of your work with families. And then below that are all of the individual documents, protocols, documentation, and so on that help to drive the planning and the reflection on the work that you're all doing with families. So we began with personal contacts. So just a review that these are used for conversations, quick interactions, how are you doing? Here's some curriculum we talked about either via email or somehow delivered to the family, maybe dropping off resources to the family or following up. Did they receive the resources that you dropped off? And so this might be through voicemail, mail, email, might be a single text or just some quick messages back and forth. And this is a perfectly acceptable form of connection with families if this is what is possible any given week or any given day that you are trying to get in touch with or follow up on a planned meeting. This is absolutely a valuable component of the work that. And so some examples that we talk about, again, dropping off resources, saying hello. Maybe you do monthly messages. And in fact, if you do a monthly message to a whole group of people, that would be a group contact. But if you individually as a home visitor do some personal contacts through some kind of monthly message, you could track it this way. You may think further, if you do have a series of texts back and forth, it is not the expectation at all that you would have to mark or create a contact for every single text exchange. You and your program will decide on how many to track, and is it, do you take one day and just put one personal contact in and to sum up the gist of all of the individual texts? That you have flexibility for. And one of the questions that has come up is, what if I plan I went ahead and planned a personal encounter. And then at the time of that encounter, I found I was only going to be able to manage a 3 to 5 minute conversation based on where the family was, their availability. And so the group had a discussion, and the best way to track this or to think about this might be to go ahead and put that actual tracking for that day or that time into the personal contact, but don't do away with your plan. If that plan might be valid next week, or that planned encounter might be valid sometime down the road, and you plan to do that, go ahead and just keep that item that you planned as pending, and then when you get to it, you get to it. If for some reason it no longer is valid, then you can cancel it. But the hope is that you're not throwing away any planning that you're doing, and that you're able to document efficiently. Efficiently and effectively. So we don't expect, if you planned a full encounter and it turns into a contact, please do not go ahead and fill in a whole personal encounter form, because that won't, that's too much too much documentation for what actually occurred. So we moved on to personal encounter virtual connections. These include all of the protocol steps with not much focus or not much attention to observation and developmental behaviors. So generally, we have been thinking about these as focusing on family health, wellness, and stability, but you may have some very deep conversations about child development, just in terms of self-regulation or routines or some other things that are absolutely applicable to the parent-child relationship. You're just not able to observe or use some strategies to support the actual parent-child interaction itself. And that's okay. Again, virtual connections are absolutely a valid and supportive way to meet families. These. Perhaps you have a phone call with a parent while the child's sleeping, and you're talking about some other types of resources and finding a job or some other items. Maybe you have a series of text messages over several days where the family shares about their health and what they're considering about doing, so maybe some health issues or something going on for the family. Or maybe you meet virtually and the child is there, but you end up having a conversation, whether it's about maybe a parent's mental health or finding self-care. And during that conversation, you may even get to, again, things around child development and conversationally asking about what the parent is thinking, how things are going. If it pivots to the child, then you may get into the parent-child interaction. But if you don't pivot to the child, that's okay. It's still a valid way. It's a supportive way to meet families. And then finally, the virtual encounter with parent-child interaction. This is where we just have this opportunity to do what we normally would do in person when children are awake during the visit, is using our observation skills and using the developmental behaviors of the child as our language. So this is intentional observation. Now, of course, it might look different now, and so we have what we hope is that there's a common thread, that you are able to narrate or comment on what you either see or hear about, that you're able to understand the parent's meaning making of the interaction and the behavior of the child, and supporting parental mastery as part of that discussion or observation of a previous interaction. So these might be live via video if parent and child are willing to be in front of their webcam and engage with you. Wonderful. If not, you might have a video that the parent and child together that the family shares with you. You may have photos of the parent and child that the family shares, or again, you might have just a really deep discussion or in-depth reflection on a previous parent-child interaction. that maybe it's something that you did provide some curriculum for, or maybe not, but the parent is able to talk about what was going on, and you're able to ask open-ended questions and understand what was going on with the family and with the child. So here are some examples again. So perhaps the home visitor observes what the child is doing and asks the parents about, what's been going on, what's been continuing new, what different behaviors, while noticing and bringing up points around parental mastery. Perhaps a mom texts a picture of a child's new behavior, and the home visitor can ask open-ended questions. So what did you do when your baby did this, and what happened when this happened? And thinking more and digging more into what the interaction was going on between mom and child at any point. This might be through a lengthy exchange of texts, perhaps, or the final example, maybe a parent shares a video via some mechanism, and the home visitor is able to narrate the behaviors, notice, serve, and return in the video, and ask dad questions, and then maybe get some more explanation about what's going on and why. So some other considerations we thought about, documenting other activities are exactly the same as you've done in the past. When you do a connection that's similar or analogous to doing a home visit, if you do an ASQ as part of that connection, you will want to document both the encounter and the screening. And if you have a connection or an encounter, and you find out about something that would be helpful for the family, and you come back and do another encounter and provide a referral, be sure and document that referral as well. So we're documenting, of course, for our ability to reflect, to be able to look and summarize, what went on. At this point, compliance is not our top priority. Our top priority is to figure out where to meet families where they are. So if they're at a basic need level, we need to be there, and that might just be through contacts. If we're moving just beyond that, but we're not ready to get to parent-child interaction, then we sit in that space for a bit. And if we do go beyond that, great. It's not about not one being better than the other. And just knowing that these families may shift in and out of these different areas over time. So we always have to be sensitive to the fact that each and every time we meet a family, we need to understand what is most appropriate for us to do together. So many of the questions, again, were around if you plan one way and it pans out another. So you'll do whatever is the makes the most sense for you. In addition, there were some questions around what if it's this length of a conversation. Well, that again we're counting on professional wisdom to decide kind of where you sit in all of this, and we. In terms of the length of the exchange that you see or the amount of time you spend, pick a way and pick what documentation makes the most sense. And if you find yourself picking away and you're not able to fill in all of the questions that we have, chances are you can go back a step and not even back a step, you can go over a step and we have the less comprehensive personal encounter form for just that need. And so now I'm going to shift over to the checklist that we've created. One additional point about when you're choosing which way to document, we did have a good discussion as well in the group around using the notes section in the personal contact to put in all that happened. So you're either using the notes section in the contact, you're using the shorter personal encounter form, or you're using the personal encounter PCI form that matches most closely to what you've done. And so we hope that this will be helpful. This document takes you through some checkboxes. I'm going to scroll to the bottom to show you that this is a tool to guide professionals in choosing how to think about and document virtual encounter connections. It's not required that you complete it. It's meant to be a supportive tool only as needed. And you may look at this once and it'll all become perfectly clear, or you may refer back to this many times. At any rate, we start out with personal contacts. So is it any of these things we talked about? Quick check-in, didn't use much of the protocol, then perhaps that's where you are. We mentioned referrals and screening should be entered additionally as applicable, and FRA, we should have FRA in here as well. And then we move on to say, okay, what did we spend the encounter primarily on? So did we get to assessment? Did we get to these affiliation points? Did we get to, system of support, family health, wellness, stability? Is that what this looked like? And if so, then it is a virtual connection. It's a personal encounter virtual connection. If you then go to the next page and say, well, actually, I did have some observation. And if you wanted to take notes for yourself here, that's perfectly fine. This is a tool for you, not for us. And then, did you see the child live through a virtual way, maybe some video? So these are just the check boxes to match what we just talked about in the PowerPoint. So this is a tool, again, for you to reflect on what was the encounter actually like and what would it most closely match up with. So with that, I think the only other point I'd like to make is that there was a wondering if Baby Talk would look back at your documentation and make comments on it. And right now, the only thing we've done is we've been trying to look at the choices of encounter location. And we noticed some in the home choices. And what we learned is that at least in one, and likely many cases, this was a case of a drop-off that turned into a half an hour conversation and discussion with a parent, with the physical distancing in place, but being outside now that it's getting nicer out. And so we are going to come up with a way. We may add something, we may not, but there will be additional communication on how we will make sure we can document currently, and then how we can transition back into some more of the in-person, whether it's physically distanced or down the road not. So we'll be getting back to the network on that as well. So thank you for your time in watching this. And as always, please do reach out to any one of us on the Learning Institute team for any follow-up or clarification. Thanks.